Allison Witt and Dr. Ryan Pennington. And the reason that I know of them is a conversation that started on Slack maybe about a month ago. Ryan posted, hey, is anybody doing anything for World Refugee Day? And what kind of creative virtual ideas do you have? And I had seen Allison on Facebook posting about how they were doing some creative things in Hamilton. And so that's how this all got going. And so Allison Witt is the Church Engagement Coordinator for International Association for Refugees Canada. And she leads the Open Homes Hamilton team, which is about people sharing their homes with newly arrived refugees and asylum seekers. And she's been working with refugees in the local church for many years. And then Ryan, who I just got to meet, but I've met him before, I guess, has been involved overseas in mission work and moved to Amarillo, Texas, where he is the director of the Refugee Language Project. And he was talking to me earlier about how they're connecting refugees and the churches and agencies, starting with language, but then how else can churches serve refugees? So welcome, you two. Why don't you wave so people know who you are? And thank you so much for being willing to share your innovative ideas today. And they're going to be sort of the groundwork. And then I know some of you, like Lucy, have already seen some of your ideas. So I know the rest of you have been thinking and have some ideas. And so we'll give some opportunity to hear about those. But let's just step back and go, what's World Refugee Day? Well, back in 2000, there was a decision that June 20th of every year would be World Refugee Day. And primarily the United Nations and the nations that are working together with the UN are the ones that are behind that. But countless civic groups around the world also host World Refugee Day events. So the nice part is that there's a fairly significant investment and movement in the world to recognize World Refugee Day, and we can come alongside that in our own ways and also bring out what the church wants to do with it. But each year the UNHCR comes out with a theme and a hashtag, and there's lots of graphics and support and stories that they have to support what happens in local communities. In addition then, World Refugee Sunday is something that the World Evangelical Alliance and the Refugee Highway Partnership globally used to call on churches to participate in World Refugee Sunday, which is the Sunday immediately before or after World Refugee Day. And it's a way to try and provide pastors and church leaders with creative tools to respond to the needs of refugees and displaced people. And there was a quote from the Secretary General of the WEA that says, "The situation may feel overwhelming." Yeah, 71 million feels overwhelming, right? But if local churches take time to pray, to reflect on God's perspective on refugees and displaced people, and then reach out to those in their surroundings who may have been forced to flee, they can make a great difference in people's lives. And many of you know that because of what you're doing. And so World Refugee Sunday is a great time to sort of take what's already happening in the culture around us with World Refugee Day and say, hey, why don't you try doing something to raise the needs of refugees and the opportunities at the same time? So Ryan, we're going to start with you. And why don't you tell us a bit about how your ministry connects with World Refugee Day and what kind of virtual opportunities and adjustments you've been thinking about for your context in Texas right now?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. Good to see all your faces. I've attended, in the past here in Amarillo, there has been a World Refugee Day celebration most years. And the resettlement agencies here in town have usually coordinated those, but this year they just have not had the capacity to even think about that. And additionally, in the past, we've noticed they really haven't been that well attended. It's just not something that we've advertised very well, mostly just involving those who are already very involved with refugees. So we started thinking about how to make this year a bit different and lean into the fact that that this year we can't hold a public gathering. And we thought, well, there are probably plenty of people who are interested, but are unlikely to leave on a pretty Saturday afternoon and go to that part of town for an event. And so we've connected with the symphony and the Museum of Art here, as well as a number of local churches. And we are putting together a video recording beforehand, a 1-hour video that our local PBS affiliate is going to air on TV and then rebroadcast as a Facebook Live event on Saturday, June 20th. And that video will include remarks from the mayor, a couple world music pieces from the symphony. I'll be doing 5 interviews with different refugee leaders. So those will be spread kind of out throughout. And then some interviews with the directors of the local resettlement agencies about some statistics. But this will be very focused locally. I mean, of course, there will all be refugee leaders who are here in our own city. And we'll be focusing on some statistics about local resettlement over the last 10 years or so. And so we're really excited to bring that together. Yeah, I don't want to go too long. So that's the gist of what we're doing. I'm happy to, Sharon, for you to lead any questions or whatever, but that's the idea.
That's very cool, Ryan. Thank you. And so maybe one question that probably everyone will have is funding. Yeah.
So the symphony actually reached out to us about 6 months ago wanting to do a public thing. And so they had planned on helping with the World Refugee Day. And so we've just redirected it. But actually, there isn't much funding needed. My church volunteered to pay a videographer to do the 5 interviews. Another church is doing interviews with local ministry leaders. PBS is airing it. Since they have a host, it's going to kind of facilitate it and open it up. But because we're giving them the final package, they're ecstatic because it's educational, and yeah, they're really pumped, and they're actually advertising for free. So really, in the end, no one is really footing a very large bill, much less than would normally take place when we're providing food and things like that.
We have a question here from Kathy. She says, wow, amazing. How are you able to get your mayor and local leaders to participate?
Our mayor has been very involved with my ministry already. I've invited her to several events at the Somali Mosque and at different, because I'm working on leadership development, so she comes and speaks fairly often. She calls me on my cell phone. She's just really engaged in the refugee thing here. And she's a believer, and so she has a real heart for refugees. So I recognize a unique thing that we have here.
That's kind of cool, Ryan. I remember hearing something in the last few weeks, and I can't even remember where, but it said during this pandemic time, don't try and create something new, use what you have. And that sounds exactly what's happening there. You know, you've got this mayor, you've got this symphony, you've got this local TV station, you've got the videographer that the churches, so you're not trying to start something from ground level. You're taking what's there and being a facilitator to bring it together. That's kind of cool to see how God is doing that.
That's right. One thing I wanted to share, is it possible, Rob and Sharon, for me to do a screen share to show a chart? Would that work?
Yes, for sure.
All right, I'm gonna give this a try, y'all.
Lucy, the answer is no, they haven't let us know yet.
It's disabled, so we won't be able to do that, but
okay.
That's okay. I can maybe.
It's disabled from the host end. I can see if I can change that quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
1 second.
Rob
Keep talking.
can probably let you do that.
Yeah.
While you're doing that, Ryan, why don't we give Allison a chance to share some of the ideas and opportunities that are happening in Hamilton for her? and then we can circle back, because I'm sure there'll be questions for her. And then I'd love to hear from others too in the time that we have, right? So Allison, would you be willing to share what's happening in Hamilton? And just before you do, you'll have to unmute. I just have to say, Ryan, that's been my experience in the past too, was that the faithful people who really loved refugees, who were the ones who showed up at the events. And that, so that's great that you guys have found a way to try and broaden the community that will be involved.
We're good for screen share, but let's keep going with Alice, and then we can come back to that with.
Sure. Yeah, so we here, like, we're in a medium-sized city that has, I'd say, good community civic support for refugees overall, but they are, like, our city has not formally done World Refugee Day events in the community historically. We have Newcomer Day and other days that they choose to focus on. So it's really left an opportunity for the church community to step into that. And so we've been doing things for, I don't know, like 8 or 9 years, I think, kind of something community-wide. I'd say there's kind of 2 streams. So we've tried to do some kind of community gathering or kind of bigger event, and then also trying to supply some resources to churches to kind of promote things within their local congregations. And so it's taken different forms every year. We've done some fun things. I think and I can share some of them if people are interested. I mean, I think one of the things we have the last few years kind of really tried to do more family-friendly events, I would say, and kind of really include some stuff specifically for children in those events, just recognizing the opportunity to shape young minds. And also, yeah, it's just, people are often, if they're going to something, say on a Saturday, they often want to go as families. And so making, I can give you a few examples. Actually, a couple years ago, we did a kind of event at a church, and we had, part of that was a children's choir. So we had, for a few weeks beforehand, invited some newcomer refugee kids and some kids from some of our, just the community, to kind of practice together this song. And then when we came together, they sang this song, which was, it was actually from the stories. I don't know if Kanan, he's a musician, rapper, who is originally from Somalia, and he wrote a book which tells his story. And so we had someone come and read that book, which is a fantastic introduction to a refugee story. And then at the end, all the kids came out and sang this song. It was the waving flag song, that was the theme for World Cup a few years ago. But that was just a really great thing because, one, there was lots of relational connection happening leading up to it. And then, of course, as soon as you have kids performing, they bring all their parents and their friends. And so we had a much bigger group than normal. And yeah, we've done some other things where we had, I don't know how much I'll just leave some of the other examples if we have time and people are interested. This year we are doing, obviously can't do any of those gatherings. So we've decided on 2 things. One is preparing some materials for neighborhood prayer walks. So we will have some like written things that we will share with people by whatever, email or on our Facebook pages and stuff, that has kind of 5 places they can stop in their community. They can do it with their family, on their own, and kind of each has a theme, like around housing or around faith or around belonging. And it gives, each place they stop, we have kind of a learning point, a prayer point, and a question for them. So that's one thing we're doing. And then we're also doing a online film screening where we've chosen a pretty short 15-minute YouTube film that we will share, and then have a online Zoom interaction like this afterwards. So that's where we've ended up for this year.
So the one question I have, Allison, and thank you, that was helpful. Who are you connecting with about distributing the prayer idea?
Yeah, so we're fortunate that we have pretty strong connections both with our local Christian refugee house shelter and also a network of churches that has been working together for a number of years and have been engaged in refugees ministry in various forms. So that would be our primary place. But then, yeah, also just, yeah, social media things but largely through existing church connections.
Okay.
And volunteers with with Open Homes volunteers and with Micah House volunteers.
Cool, thank you. Anyone else have questions for Allison or Ryan at this point? Rob, were there any more on the chat? No, okay.
I'd love to hear what other people are doing.
Jennifer's got a question for you.
Yeah, hey Allison, I was just wondering what the video was that you're going to be showing, that just a 15-minute.
Yeah, so we previewed a bunch. We ended up it's called, what is it called? It's a person's name, Cedra. We chose it because it's a Canadian story. So for us in Canada, it's a good one. I also like it because it's a refugee person telling their own story. So I think that's very, yeah, it's just her telling the story. And it also just brings out some really good themes that I think are really helpful to interact with. But I did find, I do have a short list of some other ones that are on, either just on YouTube or whatever that I can share if people are interested. But
Yeah, do that.
We originally looked at trying to do the Netflix party thing where you could simultaneously watch and stop and interact, but there's not that much. Human Flow used to be on, at least on Canadian Netflix, which is fantastic, but it's no longer on our Netflix.
And it's long, right?
And it's long, yeah, but it's good.
Yeah, it is.
And then could you also say again the name of the book by the Somalian?
It's called
Or the author?
Hainan is, let me type it in the chat.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
I do have a list. Again, I've got a pretty long list of, there's so many good children's books about refugees. And especially in the last, I'd say since, 2016 with the large number of Syrians come, I think there's just been a lot of really good books written for kids. And many of them, at least here, are available in the local library. So if your library is open, you can access them. But some of them are even read. There's YouTube videos of, people reading some of these stories that you could share, again, as a link with children's ministries. Yeah.
So Elson, can you just tell us again how you're going to do the screening of the movie?
Yeah, I think we're just going to be sharing the link to the YouTube video, encouraging people, we're going to set a time where we're going to say, we're all going to watch it at 8:00 on Thursday night. But if people want to watch it at a different time because it's easier for them, they can watch it anytime. But then we'll have at 8:30, we'll all join a Zoom conversation and have a facilitated conversation with some questions prepared. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, those are the details I was looking for.
So Allison, any of the links or names, even as maybe when we go to Ryan's screen share, if you can find any of them and stick them in the chat, that would be great. The YouTube link, any of the other things. Yeah. And Steve just wrote in the chat too that he's looking for a news link for World Refugee Day that he can share with sil.org. Doesn't have to be explicitly faith-based. And a very brief Christian emphasis video that he could recommend for local churches to incorporate into their services on June 21st. So does anyone have any quick recommendations for that? Or is this a good one, Allison, or are there other recommendations that people have?
Well, a church service, they're going to look for like a 2-minute, 3-minute type thing at the most, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. James, do you know of anything like that?
I can't say I do off the top of my head. I think what we're looking at doing, and maybe I'll just mention this because it's on topic, but we have a very strong refugee sector in Metro Vancouver, and they always take responsibility for planning major World Refugee Day events. And so what we've done in our organization actually is take a little stronger focus on trying to connect with our partner churches individually. So we try to get out a notice to them of World Refugee Sundays, letting them know that we'd be happy to come and share and provide some support or emphasis. This year, with not meeting in person, I think what we're looking at doing is just creating our own little, maybe 2-minute video, really not professionally done, because I think there's a lot of latitude now with media, even on major news channels. A lot of stuff is homemade and home done, and so we're looking at maybe just doing a 2-minute one and sending it out to all of our partner churches and just saying, don't forget World Refugee Sundays, and here's something that you can use if you'd like to, but at the very least, at least pray for refugees. And we're thinking if we send them something that's already prepackaged, like a 2-minute thing, that they might be able to include it in their online service as part of the emphasis. So that's what we're going to try and spend a little effort on.
That's great, thank you. Rob and Allison, the IFR Refugee Highway video that we used at the consultation, RHP consultation in October, is that something that could be used as an introduction for a church, the way Steve is asking?
Like
IFR.org, IFR USA, I think, as long as it's recognized, you say where you got it from, I'm sure.
Yeah, no, I was just wondering.
to the Refugee Highway one?
Yeah.
Or is it on, or is
Yeah,
it on
like
the
it's long though. Well, it's like 8 or
Oh,
8
it's too long.
or
Okay.
something. I mean, it's there and can be shared. It is a good resource. I'm not sure it's the right length for that context.
Okay, so one thing that, thank you, I'm going to say is that if you have resources and ideas, we have each other's email addresses. Like when all of you registered, we got your email address. So if you sent that information into info at our, whatever, Jake had the email address that you got, I forget the email address that he used. Was it refugeehighwaypartnership@gmail.com, something like that, that you used?
You
when
reply
you got
to the email that you got about this.
Yeah. Then you will send in your stuff and we can make sure it gets to everybody. Okay. That's just one thing. Ryan, do you want to show your screen, and then we'll move on to hear some of the other folks' ideas and questions too.
Sure, and I did want to mention, after what James said made me think, when we're doing our videos, I'm actually doing the interviews that will be longer, maybe 15 minutes or so, maybe a bit longer even than that. But then we're cutting them down to 5 minutes for the video that we're putting on air. But we're actually cutting one of them down even shorter, with the aim of giving that to our church the week before. So normally we would do that Sunday, like right adjacent to World Refugee Day. But this year, because of the fact that we do video services right now, they have more latitude with the amount of time the service extends, because they don't have services butting up against another service.
Yeah.
So having a bit longer of a video, getting something like that aired, I think there's actually less pressure, less of a friction with the schedule for a lot of churches. Just something to point out. And if I can give that video to anyone, I mean, for us, it's going to point to say, hey, tune in next week to see the rest of the video, or go on the website to see the full length video. But anyway, just a thought.
Thank you.
All right, I will show this just because I can't tell if it worked or not.
Yeah.
Yep.
You're good.
Are you all seeing a chart?
You're
Yep.
seeing many circles and rectangles.
Okay, so this is the network of refugees here just in Amarillo. And like each, I think I can zoom in and you can see it. So as an example, the Karen community, the Karen ethno-linguistic group, and then all of the subgroups that come off of it. And so in the video that we share, we're going to use this as a chance to really educate people on the diversity of refugees, because I think they tend to group them all into, you know, the one thing that they share in common, which is loss, and the one thing they're trying to move past. And so we're using this as a chance. So we're going to tee this chart up at the beginning of the video, and then I'm interviewing people from different areas on this chart. So then in the video, they will zoom in to the Karen community before that Karen leader is interviewed, and then the Somali interview, and a Chin interview, and a Dinka interview. And so anyway, I just wanted to show that because maybe, I don't know if any of you have sought out trying to study the networks in your cities. Maybe you don't have the time to do something so expansive. Amarillo is small enough that this can be done. But,
Thank you, Ryan. Yeah.
but anyway, I just wanted to show that.
Yeah, that's helpful to get a picture of what you guys are, the way you're working it too. That's very cool. Okay, I know the rest of you, some of you have already come up with some of your alternative virtual solutions too. So why don't we open that up and let us hear your stories also. So who else, or are there questions waiting, Rob, that need to be addressed right now?
I just want to share, in case anyone is not watching the chat, Lucy has said the Evangelical Missionary Church of Canada is doing something for World Refugee Day for the first time. And apparently they have resources for churches. She is volunteering to sign up and to receive them, and she'll pass them on. So
Awesome.
thanks,
Awesome.
Lucy. I would love to hear from Lucy, because Adam House, I know, has done and maybe is doing some cool stuff. I don't know if, Lucy, you want to share any of that with us?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, obviously my dog might bark because my neighbor's putting something in our front room. Nema, shh. So we've probably done something the second Sunday of June for the past 10 years or so. And initially it was a program, and for the last 2 years it's been a World International Food Fair, which obviously you have to be present for and can't do virtually. So we obviously canceled that and have just started, maybe a little bit too late, started talking about a virtual event. But we have a little committee together, and I think what we'll do is about a 40-minute video that we'll broadcast live on Facebook on June 14th in the evening. And we're not planning to do any Zoom connection to that, just hoping to get as many people to watch live as possible. But obviously it will be available afterwards. And I think it will be a series of interviews for the most part, emceed and introduced by me in between, with some thoughts on World Refugee Day and information about Adam House. And I love the story about the kids book, Allison, or some sort of video, because we were looking on ways to involve more artistic components as well, not just straight interviews and stories. So I love that idea. our residents love to sing "How Great Is Our God," and we have the chorus in many different languages. So we're going to try to do that and tape it, because they're still getting together and singing every Friday night. So we'll record that and have that available too. So I don't know. I don't know how it will go. We have some people that can do a bit of video editing, so hopefully it will be good, and people will join us, and it can be something that can be used not just for World Refugee Day, but to just promote refugees generally. So that's what's up with us.
Cool, thank you. Any questions for Lucy? Any other questions that we haven't addressed yet that you want to bring up? Any other ideas that you have that as you heard these, you went, oh, that makes me think of something we could do?
I'm not going to just keep reading all people. Allison has put another mention of some resources in the chat. So I'm just going to assume you're all looking at the chat because there's some more things being listed as far as resources there. If anyone has any clarifying questions, you can ask Allison or anyone else.
I
Awesome.
just wanted to respond to Ryan's question about licensing, because I think that's very true that
I'm going to read it. Sorry to interrupt you. I'm going to read it then because I don't think the chat comes up in the recording. So for the sake of viewers, Allison. So Allison wrote, also the Christian Reformed Church is preparing 3 or 4 videos for World Refugee Day, one focused on global, one on sponsored refugees, and one on refugee claimants or asylum seekers. And then Ryan asked, are there licensing limitations with reading a book on a recorded video? That's a good idea, but I don't know if we're allowed since it will be aired on TV. Sorry, back to you.
Yeah, just I think that that's true. You have to be careful. I don't know the ins and outs, but I do know there are limitations, and I think you'd have to be not, reading it on TV. I think you can do it in a live event, or you can, and what I like to, when I found these ones that are already kind of recorded on YouTube by like they're professional like storyteller people that have done it, and it's under so it wouldn't be us reading it if you showed one of those. But I think, yeah, if you did record yourself and shared it on a television or a very public setting, that would be against copyright.
Unless you contact the author and ask for permission, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
James, can I put you on the spot and share some of your experience and plans?
With the World Refugee Day or World Refugee Sundays?
Yes, please.
Which one?
Either.
Oh, okay.
The best one.
I think probably the World Refugee Day events that we've had in Vancouver probably don't fit this year, and I think the focus is more on online things. They've done some really interesting things. They've done a hearing, actually a whole asylum seeker journey, simulation of that journey. The public can go through some things like that. There's usually been a gathering with the mayor speaking and proclaiming World Refugee Day, and a refugee speaker, and a bit of a public program, and refugees selling their different arts and crafts and things like that. But I don't know, there is a planning team and they are working right now to do something online, and I don't know what the plans are. They haven't come out yet. What we've done is with churches as an organization, and we've as I mentioned, had put our request out to be involved in the services if possible, and sometimes we've been invited to actually speak, or to do an in-service presentation, or to have a table after the service or services, depending on the church, and have done some opportunities just to meet with people and promote volunteerism and all of those kinds of things. What I'd like to do maybe is just take a minute, if I could, Rob, just to alert you to the refugeehighway.net website, which is the global Refugee Highway website. And there are some resources there. I think the global team would like to have more resources available and posted. And if you have anything after having a look at that site that you think could be shared with the global community of ideas that you have, that would be great. You could, I could put you in touch with the person who you could send those through. But have a look there. There are a few kids activities there. There's a sermon outline. There's a poster that's available, I think, in maybe multiple languages. So refugeehighway.net. And if you have some things that you think could be shared, do get in touch with me, and I can move them on to Jude Simeon, who is looking after that. He's in Australia. And he and a colleague are helping to outline some of the things there. And they're really looking for additional resources that can be shared more globally.
Yeah, thank you, James.
Yeah, that's
I
the
know
dream.
that that Jude's been doing some good social media stuff. So if you look on Facebook, World Refugee Sunday, there is a logo and a theme verse that's been chosen and a theme for this year that you can share with your organizations if you wanted to you know, just get in on the sharing of what's already being created.
And that is global, like, so that theme
That's
and
Refugee
that
Highway Global.
being
Yeah.
used in South Africa and in
All around the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, the theme is from Leviticus, and it's the idea of same standards, same God.
Mhm.
So God sees everyone equally and has the same standards, and hopefully desires to that everyone reaches out to refugees the same. And so that's the idea. And it's, as someone mentioned earlier, it's World Refugee Sundays are really co-sponsored by the RHP and the World Evangelical Alliance.
Mhm.
James, that simulation you mentioned, was that online or is that something that happened historically?
The simulation was something that happened in person in Vancouver.
One of the things I heard about in Vancouver, I don't know if you were a part of it, James, but a few years ago they did that one church, one message, and they had, I think, like 20 something churches on Refugee Sunday that all agreed to have a sermon and kind of focus around refugee themes for that Sunday, which I thought was really cool.
Right, I'd kind of forgotten about that. I don't think our church was as involved in that, but there were some that kind of banded together and tried to have a unified front to World Refugee Sunday.
Yeah.
So one of the things I'm hearing is that this year, because things can't be in person, is an opportunity actually with churches, because if you've got something good and tightly packaged and offering it to them, they may appreciate having something that could be part of what their online service will be. And so, you know, coming up with stuff, and I agree, you know, that the standard is more open this year than the professionally produced and everything video, right? So this, you know, giving this year a chance to say to the churches, you know, even one or two, and say, hey, you know what, we've got this, would you consider using part of this during your service, and letting their tech people take it and see what they can do with it. And yeah, even if it's a prayer that they could read together during the service, or you know, a short video clip of a story of a refugee or something like that. And that's where we can share things across the continent too with each other that could be used if you come up with stuff. And maybe Ryan, your comments get to be in the part of the video so that it could be cut off at that point and take the rest of it and use it, right? So just even as you're creating things, thinking of ways, is there a way that this could be shared beyond us that could be useful to the rest of the people in the network? Of course, thinking about the refugees that are sharing their story, and whether it can go broader than to the community that you're sharing it with. But yeah,
I can't help but wonder if churches might be actually looking for things to include as provide some variety to the online experience for their
Mhm.
congregations. So I think it's a good opportunity to probe and reach out and connect this year.
Well, even, like, I don't know about your church, but mine and a bunch of them are like having families send in greetings from their homes, right? Hi, and here's our dog, and we're so happy and we miss you all, right? And they're fitting all of that in. Hi, this is a refugee house, and we're here, and we're glad you're like. There's ways, I think, that we could be part of those things that we never could be before, and who knows if we can be again. But this might be the year, right? Jennifer, I wondered what ideas you guys have.
Yeah, this was the perfect timing for us because just this past week we started planning, and typically Worcester, it's a fairly small city, but it's actually receives more refugees than any other city in New England. But they typically has been kind of an agency-wide celebration, and a representative from the mayor's office and the different agencies, and food and dance and whatnot. And it's always a last minute thrown together kind of thing. So we decided that we're just going to start. We're not sure how big it's going to get, but we wanted to focus really on celebrating the refugees themselves, because our goal is to just incorporate more of our international friends into ministry and planning, and we wanted it to be something that was more led by them. And we do have a lot of touch points with almost all of the most recent refugees anyway that have come in. So we're not sure if we're just going to keep it with have it be our event. And it does give us some leeway to be able to pray and just bring church leaders in and that sort of thing. So I'm not sure if we're going to go to the mayor's office and whatnot, but our focus is really to try to we handpicked some youth that have some art, some talent that they want to share. So we've got one Afghan girl that's going to do henna on her sister's hand during Eid this weekend. And we're going to do kind of a time lapse of that and have some music over it. So really try to focus on some of their art expression. And then we're going to celebrate some of the recent high school grads. One who's a really strong believer, who we're going to ask to share a little bit of his story. And so we're going to do pre-recorded, and then we're also going to have it live. We have a church that has a great setup for Facebook Live, just with their regular Sunday mornings. And so they've offered to help us out with that. So they've got the live streaming, whatever computer stuff. And so we'll have some live component, do it on Facebook, but also have the video. So we're going to try to do like those tiled, like a Zoom music thing or choreographed dance, or just really try to make it fun. And then instead of food, we're asking people to contribute pictures of their families or their favorite meals, and just have like one of those like fast videos compiling a lot of different hospitality scenes. And then we're going to try to get everyone, as many as we can, to answer the question "I am," just with a quick selfie video. And just to highlight, how are they viewing themselves? How can we can encourage them? How they can feel empowered. So we tested it out with a few that we were trying to help them to understand the concept. And it was just great that really quickly, I'm resilient, I'm an achiever, I'm confused. That was, a few of us, but we're going to do that. And yeah, just have a church leader speak. We're going to try to keep it at under 45 minutes if we can do it shorter than that, which we should be able to, because people, I don't know, saturated with a lot of video. And yeah, so that's pretty much what Yeah, and then we're going to also try to just put it in our community's hands as much as possible. So even video editing and tech, and someone's going to read a poem so that she wrote. So, but I like the idea of doing something even for the younger group, maybe to read a book. And yeah, so that's pretty much it.
Well, this is so exciting. Wow, you guys, like such creativity and super ideas. And I'm like, oh, just like share these with everybody, you know, like this is amazing. Wow. Any questions that anybody has for anyone at this point?
Or is there anyone who has some cool stuff coming up and you haven't shared? We'd love to hear it.
Yes, for sure.
Well, we're doing an delivery this weekend. That's unrelated, but just really praying about that opportunity.
Yeah.
So just cakes and a balloon and some coloring pages and a card with Psalm 23 on there.
Wow, beautiful.
Yeah.
I have a question of, like, for me, one of the tensions I often feel is I know there's great value in people who've had refugee experiences sharing their stories, and yet there's so many complications around, you know, when they're ready to do that and when it's a positive thing for them and not a negative thing for them. And just if people have found any, just experiences of preparing people for that, like how you work with someone to share their story well. I'd love to hear any thoughts or experiences along that line.
Some 2-minute wisdom for
Yeah, probably not a question to introduce as we're wrapping up, but
well,
we can all connect after.
Yeah.
We can make connections and
Yeah. I think one
continue the
thing I really
conversation.
appreciated, and it came out in all of yours talking, but Jennifer really brought it out to highlight, is, you know, to have a World Refugee Day celebration with refugees, but not have them be part of the conversation of how you're going to do this would feel kind of bad, right? So being able to do it where they're included in the conversation or they're helping lead that, like, what do they want it to be? Sounds less of a project and more as a collaboration, which I love.
I think we found that for us, what has worked well is an interview style rather than just a sharing story style, and then giving those interview questions to everybody ahead of time and actually having a dry run ahead of time. And that leads into a conversation and you can talk about various things. And I think that provides a smoother flow in real life.
I even like the I am idea is, instead of a refugee having to retell their trauma story, it's like I am, right? Like it's they're telling something, but it's not necessarily having to rehash the worst times of their life so far. And respecting that. Anything else anybody wanted to bring up? I'm definitely going to find a way that we'll connect each other with each other, so you'll get ideas that you sent in and you can continue to send some ideas in, and we'll make sure that there's a connection there, okay? Because there was a lot of good stuff shared today, and I know that you're going to want each other's contact info and things like that.
I have a question, please.
Sure, Kathy.
Yeah, so it's been I've just been really amazing about all the great things that everyone is doing. I just sent an email to one of our leaders in the Dallas area. Hey, what are we doing again? I'm so happy, but you guys are just rocking it, and I'm jealous. But one question that I have is, I guess one area that I know we've had issues in the Dallas area is the area of housing, and it seems like you guys have an edge on housing. I'd like to see if anyone would share with me or with us how you start the housing projects in the Canada area.
So maybe Kathy, would Allison or Lucy be willing to share your email address with Kathy later to follow up on that conversation?
I love that.
And Kathy, maybe Allison, you can also introduce Kathy to someone from Jonathan House,
Okay.
because
Yes.
they're based in the United States, Kathy, and they're doing a good house down there. And so
All right. I love that.
Okay.
Thank you.
We'll make sure you get some email addresses, okay, Kathy?
Thank you so much. I appreciate
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Rob, do you want to close our time in prayer?
Yeah, thank you everybody for joining us. Thank you particularly Ryan and Allison for your expertise and for getting us started, and for all of you who are continuing to be so creative during this time. It's inspirational, and you guys are amazing. Ryan, I'm not a chart guy, but I loved that chart. And was convicted by it. That's some crazy work. So as we pray, let's just close our eyes and picture our chart. What is our network of refugees in our lives? Where are they? Who are they? How are they linked? Where are those lines connecting us? And God, we just lift up our networks to you. We give you thanks because you've put amazing people in our lives, and we collectively across our distance, Lord, we're coming together and trying to learn and trying to understand, and we're also just trying to seek your best, seek your vision. So give us ideas and help us to do those things that you've called us to do very well. And we pray your blessing, God, on these days that we're talking about, particularly, Lord, that your spirit would be moving among society and within your church, calling people to welcome and give people soft hearts to respond. Take care of the displaced people in our world. Take care of them today. Provide for them, heal them, open up doors for them, hear their prayers. We join our prayers with them, with thanksgiving and expectation. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Wow, it's good.
Thank you, everyone.
Good.
Thanks.
Thank y'all.
Nice to meet you guys.
Yes,
Thank you.
Thank you for all you are doing. God bless.
Bye-bye.
God bless.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Together.
Yes. Bye.